So quite honestly, when we're dealing with compounding, the triad is very important. So we always try to keep our patients in our primary focus, connecting our providers with our latest research. And that has everything to do with whether we're compounding a medication specifically for you or for your pet, but even more so when we're dealing with over-the-counter products, because just because they're available over the counter doesn't mean that they don't matter. And we'll learn a little bit about that tonight too. So, as I was saying, once upon a time, quite some time ago, there was this document that was put together for to serve professionals, and really the main reason why this was put together was to help thwart some of those simple diseases that we knew about at the time. It really wasn't to serve as a guideline for optimal wellness. And so that's called the recommended daily allowances, or the RDA. And it was a guideline primarily to healthcare providers, food suppliers, consumers, and the government. But it really was just to go over a very few diseases that we knew were specifically related to nutrient deficiencies. However, we have a lot more specific information about so many more nutraceuticals than we ever have. And now is the time that we really should be focusing on optimal health rather than just replacing the bare minimum. So when we take a look at brands make all the difference in the world. And the reason why is because most of the time the brand is going to determine the quality of the product that you're getting. Sometimes that will also determine price, but not necessarily. And what I mean by that is even some of the basic nutrient suppliers out there that you could get at a health food store, like Super Supplements, Costco, even like the food co-op, they're still only nutritional supplements, and they're not necessarily governed by the different guidelines that the FDA puts together. However, when we're dealing with professional products, that's a little bit different. And professional products literally require that whoever is purchasing those have a medical license. So when we're dealing with pharmaceutical grade, which is the highest grade available for all vitamins, minerals, and supplements, that means that they have not only met, but surpassed regulatory requirements for purity, that whatever dosage form they're put in, that it's going to be dissolved and absorbed. And quite honestly, that there aren't any, wonky fillers and dyes and coatings and things like that are necessarily going to kind of interrupt that process. Medical grade is almost as good as that. And honestly, prenatal vitamins hit that category as well. But then when we're dealing with nutritional grade or cosmetic grade, those are the ones that are most often sold in health food stores. And what's interesting is that most of the time, the medication or the nutrient that is stated on the label isn't necessarily what you're going to find in full strength inside. Case in point, curcumin, turmeric. If you bought a curcumin or turmeric, it might have some part of the plant in there, but might not necessarily have the most pure part of the plant. So turmeric and curcumin, same product, literally is very difficult to absorb. When you're dealing with a pharmaceutical grade of that nutrient, it is proven to be absorbable. So it's very pure. However, a nutritional grade might be from part of the stem or part of the leaf, maybe another part of the plant that still is considered turmeric, but maybe not necessarily as pure as what it could be. And of course, we never advocate for humans using products that are specific to the feed or agricultural groupings. So every year, over 75% of your body is reconstructed from nutrients that you consume. Now, the typical American diet, the standard American diet, is truly sad. And even if you ate very, very healthy, you still may not even meet the US RDA. So it's important that we evaluate and understand those nutrients that are very important to help keep you healthy, but also to help produce optimal health. And that's where the quality of these nutrients are very important, because if your cells are not getting the nutrients that they need, they're not going to be able to work as well in the body, and therefore they're not going to function as well. And usually that's when we see a wide variety of symptoms like high blood pressure, foggy thinking, quick aging, but even just simple aches and pains, maybe even acute and chronic illness like diabetes, arthritis, things like that. So if you purchase your vitamins, and we always are very mindful of everyone's budget, so that's also very important, please keep them in a cool, dry place. Don't throw them in the fridge. That doesn't necessarily extend their quality. It does not extend them beyond the date that's actually written on the bottle. The fridge is actually got a lot of moisture in it. And anytime that you're going to be adding moisture to your supplements, that is going to cause them to be less effective over time. You also want to make sure that you're taking your supplements with a good sized glass of water. That's harder to do at night, but most of the time, pharmaceutical grade supplements are meant to be taken multiple times a day, which I know can be a little bit daunting at first, but quite honestly, that's the reason why we eat. We eat morning, noon, and night to provide nutrients to our body. So that's really when we should be taking our supplements as well. So sometimes they can, nutraceuticals, vitamins, minerals can be combined with your foods, and sometimes that works very, very well, but not all of them work with food. Some need to be taken on an empty stomach. Also, we need to be very careful about the prescription medications that you're currently using, because prescription medications can interact with vitamins, minerals, and herbal products. So you always want to make sure you keep a running list with not only what you're taking and take that to your medical provider, but you're always welcome to bring those into the pharmacy as well, so that we can help guide you with that. So let's start with some of the basics of what vitamins really are. So vitamins are in two different categories. There's the water soluble, and this is a long list of most of the water soluble vitamins. They really need to be taken at least twice a day, primarily because these medications, these vitamins do not stay or store in the body. So they might a little bit, but really over a 24-hour period, they're pretty much washed out. So you really do need to replace those on a regular basis. Now, there's more to just water-soluble vitamins. These are the typical names for those, and those are available in different forms as well. Whether or not you methylate is another topic for conversation that we can have at another time.
Michelle, there's a question. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please do.
Sherry just asked, is Costco brand turmeric then not dependable?
That is a very good question. It is not a pharmaceutical grade product. It is a nutritional grade, and I believe you should buy the best quality that you can put into your body. You have one health and one life and one body, and you need to make sure that you're doing the best that you can for yourself. Further in the discussion, we'll talk a little bit about a thing called dry labbing, and that is, without actually evaluating what that manufacturer is behind that Costco product, I can't fully answer that question. What I do know is that it's not the highest grade that's available out there. So I believe that you should pay attention to your budget and do the best that you can for yourself, because quite honestly, I don't make enough money to literally just dump it in the toilet, right, in flush. I want to make sure that whatever I'm spending my hard-earned money on is going to do me as much benefit as possible. Same thing with my family, right? So I think as we go through this conversation, we'll be able to fully answer that question for you. So fat-soluble vitamins, they tend to stick around in the body a little bit longer, so they can usually be taken once a day. The difficulty with kind of a multivitamin product is that if you are buying a pharmaceutical grade product, it is usually in a serving size of perhaps 4 to 6 units, whether they're capsules or tablets. And so those are intended to be taken multiple times during the day. So if the serving size is 4, for example, that would be 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. If the serving size is 6, it's usually 2 in the morning to sometime midday and 2 in the evening. You can do 3 and 3 with that serving size of 6 as well. And just because it's a fat soluble vitamin and you do take it later in the day isn't necessarily a bad thing. So when we deal with minerals, minerals are broken into macro minerals and micro minerals, and they have to do with kind of the quantitative use of these products. So you're going to be most familiar, I guess I should say, with the macro minerals: calcium, chloride, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium. Some of those we get in our daily foods. A lot of times we do need to enhance those products because of how or what foods we're using. So for example, the Dairy Council would love for you to consume a lot of dairy products throughout the day so that you can get your perfect amount of calcium. Well, quite honestly, you're going to get more calcium out of broccoli than when you will out of milk. And because the dairy products usually have other things that can decrease the absorption of other minerals, other vitamins, but also because so many people have issues with dairy and they're just not aware of what's going on. They have a lot of side effects, but whether they're gastrointestinal issues, skin issues, even sleep disturbances that may be related to dairy, but if you don't have those tested, it's kind of hard to know. So the micro minerals are things that we're probably not as familiar with unless you have a significant issue. For example, anemia, then you're familiar with iron. But most people are not familiar as well with why do we use copper? Why do we use zinc? Although we've heard a lot about zinc in the last couple of years, haven't we? Yeah, and how it works not only to help modulate our immune system, but also to interrupt a virus being able to replicate. But the one thing that I haven't heard a lot about when a lot of companies are saying, take a lot of zinc, is that really for every 15 milligrams of zinc that you take, you really need to replace that with 1 milligram of copper, because copper can be wasted in the body if you have too much zinc. And with that, you could lead down a path of a type of anemia that isn't reversible. So you have to be very careful with that. Boron is very important for bone development. Chromium, very helpful for modulating blood sugars, but also thyroid function. Cobalt is one of those micro minerals that we just don't see a lot of. But manganese, nickel, selenium, again, selenium, very important for thyroid function. So that doesn't mean that you just go out and you just buy a bunch of this stuff. It's really important, again, to have your mineral content evaluated before you jump into those. And there are lots of different ways to do that. Again, take them with food. And because the storage of each mineral is different, it's important and storage in the body, not necessarily about what shelf you put those on, but how each of these minerals is stored in the body and utilized in the body. That's where it needs to be important that we tailor the nutrients that you need specifically. So when we talk about fatty acids, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So a lot of times fats get a really bad rap. You know, they jack up cholesterol. You've got to be really careful with fats. They're going to make you fat. They're going to cause artery blockages that can lead to stroke, et cetera, et cetera. Well, let's talk about the different types. So the saturated fats are usually touted as the ones that are bad. And because the majority of the time, the saturated fats that we consume are usually from animal sources, fatty meats and dairy. They're usually solid at room temperature. So even plant sources of saturated fat, such as coconut oil, are solid at room temperature. And sorry for the typo there, but coconut oil is a saturated fat, but it tends to be a little bit better for you than, let's say, a lot of meat fats, animal fats. And the reason is because a lot of times when we're dealing with animal fats, we're also dealing with the stuff that those animals are eating, because you can't cook out the heavy metals, the toxins, and that sort of thing that animals are fed. And a lot of times animals are made to be fat, so that they weigh more at market. The farmer would get more for their animal, but also because fat tends to taste better than lean meat. So there's that issue. But you can't necessarily cook out those sources. So if animals are fed a lot of grains and you have a gluten issue, be careful there. But also sometimes they're fed junk, and we have to be cognizant of that. And I think that that's very important. I prefer, in my family, we prefer to eat grass-fed if we're eating animal sources. So unsaturated fats are broken down into monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Now, polyunsaturated fats can actually help you lower your LDL and your HDL cholesterol. So usually if your total cholesterol is well over 200, the doctors are going to say, hey, we need to, knock that down a wee bit. And you can use polyunsaturated fats such as omegas 3 and 6, which are not produced in the body, meaning you have to put them into your body. Those are called essential fatty acids, EFAs. And so when you look at the back of your container of omega 3s and 6s, you're going to see EFA, DHA, ALA, things like that. And those are the different components of that polyunsaturated fat. Now, monounsaturated fats may help lower LDLs. And there's also a few plant products that can help reduce cholesterol levels as well. Now, trans fats, those are what we call the ugly fats. They only occur in nature in very small amounts because they're not good for us. However, trans fats are what we now know are in a wide variety of processed foods throughout the American diet, and they can actually lead to not only acute issues such as arthritis and potentially inflammation in the body, but also long-term issues, which we unfortunately are taking a lot of medications for. So when we get into probiotics, people have questions like, well, what's your cheapest one you have? Well, they're not all created equal. So every brand is a little bit different mixture, a little bit different cell concentration as well. And quite honestly, some can be stored at room temperature, some have to be stored in the refrigerator once you open them up. So dermatology is usually stemmed from a dysbiosis or an imbalance of good bacterium in the gut. Antibiotic use, whether it's oral or IV, can often change the gut flora, not just for the short term, but even many years down the road. And antibiotic use earlier in life can be detrimental to other health issues years down the road. So for example, a lot of the later 20s and 30 somethings that had ear infections and strep throat and things like that, even at a very young age, they were, just handed out antibiotics for month after month after month until they put in ear tubes. Well, a lot of those individuals are actually finding that they have problems with their gut. A lot of them have food sensitivities and a wide variety of allergies that are plaguing them, and that's not necessarily going to go away. So we can determine what's going on in the gut. We can determine then what would be a better probiotic for you, as well as sometimes we need to provide not just a probiotic, but a better way to actually heal the gut. And because probiotics have been found to be beneficial, not only from the start of the oral cavity, which is really also our sinuses and our ears, but also through our throat down into our stomach, our small intestine, and our large intestine. So it's really important to evaluate what's going on. So if you have GERD or reflux and it's determined that you have H. pylori or some other bacterial imbalances there are very specific probiotics that we use to help with that, to help rebalance the gut. And then usually starting in the second month is when we add the prebiotic, which is usually a food source to help the probiotic start growing. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just start the prebiotic right when you start probiotics? And the reason is we don't want the bad guys to grow. We just want the good guys. So we try to use probiotics that we know are going to survive digestion. So usually a spore type of technology, and then move from there. So a lot of times nutrients can result, a lack of nutrients can result in a wide variety of disease states that we don't necessarily always pin on certain nutrients. So for example, depression. A lot of people say, I'm just kind of down, I'm blue, and they have depression, but sometimes it's as simple as adding some B6, because B6 is mandatory in moving from sleepy to happy. So 5-HTP to serotonin. And because 90% of the serotonin, or your happy hormone, is made in your gut, we've got to make sure it's all healthy. So a lot of times people are put on antidepressants or anxiolytics, and they kind of sort of work, but usually 3 to 6 months down the road, people are like, I'm not sure what this is doing for me. So maybe it's not a lack of that antidepressant or that anxiolytic medication. Perhaps we need to go back and actually take a look at what is causing the stress and the depression and anxiety. Sometimes it's a lack of hormone, sometimes it's a lack of nutrients, sometimes it's other metabolic issues in the body as well. And we can evaluate those. There are blood tests that can be run to evaluate exactly what's going on with your nutrient status. And there are stool samples that can be collected to actually identify what is happening in the gut as well. Because the bottom line is that dementia and Alzheimer's is not a natural part of the aging process. Yes, we all get older, but that doesn't mean that we should fall into a role of dementia and Alzheimer's and just accept that as part of the normal, because it's not. We can back that train up and help deal with those issues much earlier in life, and hopefully avoid all of that altogether. When we're dealing with high blood pressure, sometimes, again, it has to do with lack of nutrients. Maybe it has to do with a poor diet, poor digestion. And some people just don't know what they don't know. And that's okay. There's a lot of fantastic naturopaths, functional medicine providers, as well as really good nutritionists out there. And not all of them are in our backyard. Some of them are in our next door neighbor's backyards. And what I mean by that is maybe neighboring counties. But what we've also learned over the last couple of years is, just like this, we can bring amazing information to you very easily over a Zoom or a telehealth connection. So you don't necessarily have to settle for what a local large medical clinic provides. Sometimes we can actually find better health in smaller medical clinics that are specializing in certain areas. What we also know is that many times medications used to treat high blood pressure actually cause a wasting or a depletion of very specific B vitamins, sometimes minerals and amino acids as well, which are then going to cause a catch-22 and cause that blood pressure to go up. It's crazy, but that is what happens. Diabetes. There's so many people running around right now with a hemoglobin A1C above 5.5. And so if it's 5.6 or 5.7, they're told that they have pre-diabetes. And a lot of times, if you're on diabetes medications, they are going to watch your blood pressure and your cholesterol very, very well. And what we know is that, again, some of these medications can often deplete the body of those nutrients that are necessary to control all of these issues as well. We also know that Akkermansia, which is a very specific gut bacterium, a lot of times is very low in those individuals that are diagnosed with diabetes. And there are ways to actually boost that up. We know that metformin, which is used to help decrease diabetes, actually works on that specific bacterium to then help regulate blood glucose control. And when that is not controlled and blood sugars are elevated, they can often lead to high blood pressure, depression, aches and pains, changes in sleep patterns, weight gain, muscle weakness, and even Alzheimer's disease. Often these medications also decrease the concentration of magnesium, chromium, and selenium in the body, but that is really important because magnesium, selenium, and chromium help to manage blood glucose levels. It's kind of crazy. So if you don't remember all of this, no big deal. There's ways that we can help you remember some of this, and we can always refresh your memory. So statins they are very commonly prescribed classification of medication. In fact, the standard of care is that if you have diabetes and you have high blood pressure, you're automatically given a statin just to make sure that they keep your triglycerides and cholesterol under control. Well, you can still use medications to decrease your LDLs and your HDLs and even your triglycerides without using a statin. Often statins, so about 30% of the time they work really, really well. Also, about 30% of the time they actually increase your blood glucose level, which then increases your blood pressure, which then increases your cholesterol. So, there's, again, it's that funny little catch-22. We also have to be very careful about drug interactions and also food interactions, because anytime we're dealing with cholesterol medications, we have to be mindful about grapefruit, which is kind of crazy, but grapefruit, of all the citrus, is very high in a very specific enzyme, which can interact with these medications and really mess up what's going on in your liver. So allow your pharmacists and your physicians, all of your providers, all of this information, and so that we can help you understand how diet, medications, and nutraceuticals work really well together. A lot of people are running around with chronic pain. I think chronic pain is one of the most common reasons why we miss a lot of work. I actually missed work today because I have a shoulder injury and I haven't slept well for the last 5 days. I was it just wasn't working for me. So I made another appointment, hoping to get some relief with this. But what we also know with chronic pain is that a lot of times prescription medications like opiates, whether they're natural or synthetic, are prescribed, or muscle spasm medications, things like that. What we also know is that opiates tend to deplete the body of some of the natural painkiller chemicals and some of the other nutrients that are responsible for reducing inflammation. So that's kind of crazy, right? But going back to statins, we also know that statins deplete the body of CoQ10. CoQ10 naturally decreases with age. However, CoQ10 is very important to reduce inflammation throughout the body, specifically in blood vessels. So what can you do? Well, there are times when very strong medications are very necessary, but they may not necessarily be the best thing for long-term use. What we do know is that magnesium is a fantastic muscle relaxer. It's very natural. Magnesium is mandatory in over 400 different processes in the body. What we also know is that digestive enzymes, which help break down our food particles so that we can liberate those vitamins and minerals from our foods, decrease with age. So if we add digestive enzymes with each meal, if they're necessary, then we can not only help liberate those vitamins and minerals, but we can also reduce inflammation and pain. Some digestive enzymes, when they're taken between meals, are actual anti-inflammatories. When they're taken with meals, they help with the process of digestion. Many herbs work along the same pain pathways, such as full spectrum CBD products. So, and there's more. There's so many more other herbal products out there as well. And there's some amazing combination of things. So again, talk to your providers, talk to your pharmacists, and let's get you on a better road to wellness. So how can we help you? Well, this is a few ways that you can actually connect with us. The LDN Pharmacists and Makers Compounding Pharmacy are two websites. You can also look us up on a wide variety of social media platforms. But I didn't talk about dry labbing that I thought I would mention earlier. So If we go back to nutraceutical lines, cosmetic and nutraceutical lines, it has been proven, and I believe there's information out on the FDA website, although it may be fairly hard to find because the FDA redid their website, and nutraceuticals are not usually FDA approved nor followed. So in other words, the FDA doesn't necessarily go through and, you know, bless them with their holy water, so to speak. They are uncategorized and unregulated. Not the case with pharmaceutical grade, but absolutely the case with nutraceutical grade. So it has been shown that there were some manufacturers of quite a few of the very common 1 tablet per day kind of dosage forms that literally took their list of medications, they took it to the lab, and they said, we want to make sure that these products are listed in this strengths and it's all in that 1 tablet, right? Winky, winky. And then the lab comes out with their form and said, oh, absolutely, it's all right there. Well, what I find interesting is that sometimes those tablets are, you know, fairly big. They're like the size of, you know, the end of your finger kind of thing. But you only have to take 1 a day. Whereas when you look at pharmaceutical grade, the serving size can, like I said, sometimes be 4 or 6 capsules. And the capsule is the same size as that tablet. So how can that be? How can they make sure that they get all of those things? And that list on the back of that bottle is pretty long. You know, it could be 30 different ingredients. So how is it that they can get it all in 1 tablet and you only have to take it once a day? I don't know. But dry labbing is a process by which the lab says that it's in there when really it hasn't been proven as such. And usually that's the difference between a pharmaceutical grade and a nutraceutical grade, is that it's not proven. It's not as pure, and it might have an herb in it, but it may not necessarily, or a supplement of some sort, may not necessarily be the right part of the plant that is going to absorb. Do we have any other questions? I hope that answered your question, Sherry. You're welcome to drop any other questions in the chat as well. Next month's webinar, which you are all welcome to sign up for, we're going to go over the details of low-dose naltrexone and how low-dose naltrexone has been helping many with a wide variety of autoimmune disease, chronic pain, even things like fibromyalgia and diabetes, mental illness, and also some very significant issues as well. Thank you, Scarlett. There's a wide variety of ways you can register, including this link that Scarlett put in the chat. You can also go out to makerscompounding.com/webinars and register there as well. I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight and hope to hear from you and see you in the store soon. You're welcome to join us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll take care and we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye now.